Hello everybody, this is Skyth, and today I'm going to give you guys an overall look at OTT. Now, OTT, whenever you think of OTT, you think of basses similar to this. Or simply growls kind of like this. Now, I'm going to give you guys an overall look at OTT, tell you guys what everything in here does, as well as give you guys some tips for making sounds and some things you want to avoid when you're using OTT. So first of all, what you see when you have the default OTT is you have your depth knob, time knob, in gain, out gain, your upwards compression, your downwards compression, and all these gain tools right here. Separate from all this, you can change the threshold for each band, for both the low, mids, and highs. Now let's look at the first knob, which is depth. This knob is basically a dry and wet knob. When it's at 0, it's only the dry signal. When it's at 100, it's the wet signal. Now, the time knob is a different story. This would be explained simply as an attack release in one knob. In the Ableton version, you are able to have a separate attack and release time, which you can change them both independently. For this, however, you only have one knob, and putting it all the way to 0 would be having your attack and release at 0 and vice versa for 1000%. Your in gain is pretty self-explanatory. It's the signal going into the compressor. You can turn it down or up. The out gain is the signal after compression. Usually what OTT does is it limits or compresses downwards more than upwards, so sometimes the loudness is lost, so you can quickly adjust that with the out gain right here. These three knobs are also pretty explanatory themselves. If you feel like your sound needs more low end, you can turn this up, and you can do the same for both the mids and highs. These thresholds determine where you want the compression to be. Anything in the orange or yellow is going to be compressed upwards. Anything in the green is going to be compressed downwards. Sadly enough though, you can't change the distance between the yellow and the green. These are fixed for the standalone version, so sadly you cannot change that, but you can move these up and down to your liking. Now, upward compression and downward compression. This determines how extreme the compression is. If you have the upward compression to 1%, it's going to squash these all the way up to the limit, as well as this one. Anything above this is going to get squashed to 200%. I don't have the frequencies for each of these bands, so I'll probably put this in post-production for later in the editing, so it'll be around here somewhere. Now, let's get into the actual useful things you can do with OTT. So, first of all, I have this bass. Now, if you look at this sound, you can tell that there's not much going on. All we have here is a sub, a wavetable, a low pass with a notch, hyper, a phaser, and a high pass going on. This is all being automated by a triangle wave. Now, most of the magic is simply going through OTT. So if I disable all of these plugins really quick, this is the actual original signal. And if we just put one instance of OTT on here, you start getting those frequencies that were lost in the low pass. And for this one, it's pretty much the same, except I put the upward and downward compression all the way up, and I added two more, which are basically just default. And then I just added a vocoder right here, saturation, diminished expander, an EQ, and compression. So OTT can be really helpful when trying to sound design growls or the things that are bass orientated. Something I know when using OTT a lot is that there is a huge bias towards the 3K frequency. And you can see in this crazy filter that I've done right here, it looks pretty insane, but I did it for good reason. You can see that right here, OTT really likes to push the 3.5K frequency mark. So what I did, I just simply turned that down and raised the rest of the frequencies. Now let's move on to another another sound we can make with OTT. This one isn't bass heavy, but rather it is more ambient, and this patch is just a sine wave being played, and all I have on here is an amp, reverb, and OTT. This is what it sounds like. It's really pretty. Now I'm just gonna break down the effects on this. This is just an amp. Brings out some frequencies, reverb, an EQ to keep the lows from exploding, and OTT. Now, a huge difference aside from this in the bass is I have the LMA OTT skin on here. Aside from that, I have the time on 460. Now, why is it on 460? Because of this. If I have this all the way down, it'll be really inconsistent with the levels. And you can also hear this sort of hissing right here where you see my mouse is at. And that's not supposed to be there. It sounds a lot softer when it's at a higher time. And I just added a second one, which is just default pretty much. The time's a little bit shorter on this, but the depth is also 50%. Now that we've gone through the good things you can do with OTT, let's get into the things that you should avoid when using OTT. Now, I know a lot of people use OTT with their drums, and usually it's for something like a kick or a snare. They want to make their kicks and snares sound punchy or fat, and they'll just put an OTT on it. Now, up here, I have some effects. I have a transient processor that's just boosting the transient way too much, and a saturator, which is just to make it all crunchy and to take down the transients. An OTT at 17%, and just a little EQ. That's being routed into a bus with more OTT and a limiter. And it sounds like this. Now, at first listen, you may not think there's anything wrong with this, but I can show you what's wrong with this in a sec. If I just simply turn up the depth of this OTT, you can hear that there's some white noise in the background playing as a kick drum. Now, this isn't a part of the original sample. You can also hear in the low end that's going boom, boom, boom. It sounds like the kick drum is hitting twice. Boom, 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 boom. You can actually see the effects taking place in the limiter itself. You can see right here where there's like a little hook, and you don't want that. You want it to be a nice swoop down for the kick. So an easy fix for this is to just not use OTT, or at least use very little of it. Now, there are some other versions of this OTT artifacting. Some sound more computerish, and some sound just like white noise, like this example right here. And you should always be aware of OTT and what it does to your drums or other sounds, so it doesn't bleed into other sounds, and so it doesn't cause a huge mess in your frequencies. With that being said, this wraps up this small little tutorial overview of OTT, and there's a link for OTT down in the description below if you don't have it already, in case if you've been living under a rock your entire life. So anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.